Hello and welcome to the Rewind, where we dive into the making and legacy of various films from cult classics to award-winning masterpieces. This week's film is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the 1994 Gothic horror directed and starring Kenneth Branagh, which many consider to be the most faithful film adaptation of Mary Shelley's 1818 novel. And it's also one of the most divisive of the movies amongst critics, with plenty of drama behind the scenes as well. Joining me today to talk all things Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is writer, narrator, editor, Mr. Tyler Nichols. You can check out his stuff at Joe Blow. You can also go to tylernicholscreates.com to check out his work there. I'm going to have all links to everything Tyler Nichols in the show notes below. And I'm happy to say, Tyler, I thank you so very much for joining me again on the Rewind. How are you?
Oh, I'm not too bad. How are you?
I am really well, thank you. Today, this is a little funny for me though, because it is past Halloween season and it's a sunny day
hmm
here in Sydney, but I'm talking all things Gothic horror with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And this was a movie for me. So this came out in 94, so I was around 13 years old when it came out. And I didn't see this in the cinema, but I remembered my older brother, who's a frequent supporting character in a lot of my videos, because he had the video store card and he used to bring back movies all the time. He brought back this film, and it was a film that my younger brother and I just watched over and over and over again because we haven't quite seen a horror movie like this. So I think it was one of the first time I was really introduced to kind of gothic horror in the context that Brandon was trying to do in this film. And there's so many things about the movie that I absolutely love. A lot of it comes from ignorance because I before then I hadn't seen a Frankenstein movie before. I wasn't
No.
sure if Robert De Niro was supposed to play Frankenstein. There wasn't that kind of stigma to it. I just went in there fresh eyes and took it in, and I loved the movie, and I still do quite like the movie very much as well. I don't know whether that's nostalgia or what have you, but it's a film that I do have a soft spot for. And the whole thing about the heart being ripped out of Helena Bonham's Carter's chest. I had never seen anything like that in a movie before, maybe with the exception of a Temple of Doom, right? With that whole kind of
Yeah.
scene in that movie. But that was just like a moment of horror that I think, I would never forget, and still don't. It's quite a shocking startling kind of scene in the movie. It still sticks with me, especially when I watched at such a young age. What about yourself,
hmm
Tyler? Do you remember the first time you came across Mary Shelley's Frankenstein?
Well, yes. So I actually didn't see this until high school when we were reading the book, and then the
Hmm.
teacher had us watch this because, as you said, it's like considered one of the most faithful adaptations. Though, doing research for this, I discovered there's apparently a Hallmark movie that people consider to be even more faithful to the book. So
Hmm.
I'm very curious to now to see that one. But yeah, I had seen it then. I liked it for some of its eccentricities and how different it was. I had grown up on like the Boris Karloff films, as well as Young Frankenstein was a staple in my household. So this De Niro version of the Frankenstein's monster, whatever you want to call him, it's is very different than what I was used to, and I kind of dug it then. I had a very different experience this time viewing it. Can't was not a fan, and to the point where it kind of affected my viewing experience with the new Guillermo del Toro version because there
Right.
are a lot of similarities that then yeah kind of crossed over. But like yeah, I struggled with this one, but I understand people who are fans of the book being really into it.
So a name that is going to come up a lot is Francis Ford Coppola. Of course, people who do know him, Godfather, Apocalypse Now. The big film that kind of came before this regards to horror was Bram Stoker's Dracula, which it did in 1992, and that was pretty much like it's one of his biggest kind of movies of all time. I think like
Yeah.
definitely culture, box office wise, and all that. Also a film that kind of divided critics a little bit in regards to his take on Gothic horror and such. To me, I like the film myself, and I think there's
hmm
a thing about that movie. It's kind of like almost like operatic in the sort of way. I know Coppola loves to opera, and he references it quite a bit in some of his works. So he was going to do Frankenstein next, and he was kind of attached to direct it. But after the whole Dracula thing, he was like, "I'm going to try to pass this off to someone else." Um, how he kind of came about it is that there's this bloke named Steph Lady, kind of fascinating bloke. He was like in his kind of a bio on this guy. In his 20s, he hitchhiked across the country. He drilled oil in Texas. He worked in a mental hospital in Tennessee. He did a variety of jobs. By the time he comes to LA, he becomes a Spanish teacher and he's doing scripts. So he had like 13 scripts, which were kind of like written. Only two became movies, which is Frankenstein and later on Dr. Dolittle, the Eddie Murphy adaptation.
Yes.
So he finds himself in Francis Ford Coppola's office because he wrote this treatment about Frankenstein, which Coppola really liked. And so that kind of got the ball rolling here. Um, and the interesting thing about this kind of adaptation as well, I think anyway, is that I don't remember the last time there was a Frankenstein movie that kind of came out before this. I think maybe Monster Squad with what maybe that Frankenstein was kind of the last thing before that. But it's I think
Hmm.
once in a while Frankenstein kind of comes up. It seems like once every generation and has a little bit of an update to it. You just mentioned the Del Toro one. This is Frankenstein circa 90s. But without that Dracula coming up beforehand, though, there's no way you can move on to Frankenstein, right? It kind of seemed like Coppola
Yeah.
setting up his own kind of dark universe here, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was definitely a time during that era where it was like, oh wait, they're gonna try and do its own yeah, they're bringing back the Universal monsters, but in this gothic horror, taking it more seriously kind of way, but still over the top and stylized, which I mean, a lot of that has to do with Coppola and then who would eventually direct Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Kenneth Branagh, because I know that a lot of the behind the scenes stuff with that is Kenneth Branagh's ego going out of control.
Yeah, big time. And get into Kenneth Branagh now. At the time, he's 33 years old. And he's kind of like seen, especially through American eyes. I think he himself says that in the UK, people kind of saw him as a bit of a kind of like a bit of a pretentious kind of guy and all that. But in America, they're
Yeah.
like, this is the second coming of, it's like this mix of Orson Welles and Laurence Olivier kind of put together in one thing. He's done like Frankenstein was his fifth movie in a row that he directed and starred in, which is kind of crazy because he did Henry
Oh,
V, Dead Again, Peter's Friends, Much Ado About Nothing, and I don't know if you saw the cast, ever seen the cast in that movie. They're just stacked with people from everyone from Keanu Reeves to Denzel Washington, and it's a crazy movie.
yeah.
So he gets Coppola kind of brings him in and asks him about this movie. At first, he says he wasn't really interested in doing it because his whole thing about Frankenstein was the Boris Karloff kind of like monster classic Universal ones, which he found to be like classics, but kind of like way past their time. But then when he read the book, that's when that really kind of brought him to certain comparisons, especially which he had in regards to Shakespeare. And I think that's something that kind of comes across in this movie here. There's a kind of Shakespearean element, even kind of like a Greek tragedy
Yeah.
element to it that he brings to the film, which I think can be to the film's benefit and to its downfall as well. Because this is the world that he came from. This is what he knows, right? And that's kind of like where he wants to take this movie. But I guess, when it comes to all things Brenner, now we see him as what? He's an Oscar-winning writer. He's a character actor. He still directs some films, like the with the what do they call it, the Agatha Christie novels and such. But
Yeah.
who do you think is the comparison that we can make today of this writer director who's kind of like grabbed everyone's attention? He's like, oh, this is like the second coming. Because I can't think of like the one guy that's kind of like that everyone would just be like, everything kind of the sun kind of revolves around it, especially in Hollywood. Some kind of import that is like almost like an exotic creature that Hollywood must grab and maintain and turn into their own kind of Hollywood churning machine. I can't think of anyone quite like that these days.
They tried it. Taika Waititi was close.
Oh, right. Yeah.
He had some hit after hit after hit, and then it's like they tried to milk him dry. So then it was like, ah, nope. Tried to put his weird sense of humor into too many different things, and where then it's like, ah, it doesn't work in everything. So but yeah, Branagh is someone that's very unique. It's funny because I mostly, when I think of Kenneth Branagh, I always think of how he cheated on Emma Thompson with
Mm,
Helena Bonham Carter during this film,
this
and I
movie.
think
Yeah.
even Emma Thompson's like daughter has like recently shaded him regarding it. I always think of that whenever genuinely anytime I see Brana, because even we're this is Christmas essentially, that's like right before Thanksgiving that we're filming, but like it's practically Christmas time, and there's this movie, the movie Love Actually, that
Yeah.
then Emma Thompson's in, and the whole thing is she's like her husband might be cheating on her, and
Yeah,
she's
Alan
talked about.
Rickman played that, right?
Yes, Alan
That's right.
Rickman, and it's like this. She even has said that like the main her main inspiration was like thinking of what Kenneth Branagh did to her. Then. It's like so. I very much anytime I used to always think of Thor, but then once I heard the Emma Thompson story, that's all I think of when I think of Kenneth Branagh.
And the interesting thing about that time, so around 94, you have this Brit who comes to America. He's making films. He makes a film in Britain, but it's a Hollywood production, right? But it's kind of like,
Yeah,
kind of almost like the Hugh Grant situation as well. He's like this guy, kind of this another Brit who comes in. He's the next kind of leading man. People making comparisons to maybe like Cary Grant or something. And he comes to the States and he gets engulfed in his own situation, cheating on
yeah.
Elizabeth Hurley with a prostitute in LA amongst all kind of things, which is kind of interesting how the Brits here kind of get kind of found themselves in these kind of like situations that weren't good for their careers whatsoever.
Always hoisted by their own petards.
I want to talk Frank Darabont. So he gets brought in because he wants to they need to do rewrites because Branagh pictures, Shakespeare, Greek tragedy, all this stuff. He's like, it's not here yet, but we can get there. Frank
Mhm.
Darabont comes in. He does a rewrite. Before then, so Shawshank was kind of like being made that year. It was coming out in 94. Hadn't quite come out yet. I think the big stuff he did so far was he did a few episodes of Young Indiana Jones, Nightmare
Yeah,
on Elm Street 3, which I think is like one of the best in the series. The
agreed.
Blob remake as well. He comes in, he does some stuff, and then afterwards he actually says, and I found this in a conversation he had. He said, this is Darabont's words, is that I've described Frankenstein as the best script I ever wrote and the worst movie I've ever seen. And someone like Frank Darabont, when he says something like that, he's a quality guy that makes quality movies, and I think that is something that is shared with a lot of people on his production, where that the initial thought of what this might become is totally different from what it did became, because it comes back to Branagh essentially getting high in his own supply and getting a little
Yep.
crazy with stuff here.
Yeah, I was literally actually in the process of finding that quote because
Yeah.
we did a WTF on it for Joe Blow very recently, and that was the that quote kept going around in my head. Like, yeah, because Darabont's the man. I absolutely love Frank Darabont. So to have him have like say that kind of thing about the finished product, we are like, ooh, that's not something that you want your writer saying. But that's also the more I've ever read up on behind the scenes stuff, so many writers, it's like, yeah, they might be attributed as the writer, but that doesn't mean what ends up on screen can all be
Yeah.
attributed to them because so much gets changed from the script process just to filming, whether because we've always heard the stories of like, oh yeah, the director was, changing the script the night of or the day, like the morning of, we got new pages. And it's all just WGA guidelines that then that's the reason that like someone else is still listed as the writer, but they might be like, the structure is mine, but nothing else is.
Hi guys, Matt here from Matt's Movie Reviews, letting you know that the Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel has launched channel membership. This provides exclusive videos and other cool stuff as well for all channel members. It's under one tier, one price, and with that one price you get exclusive reviews. For example, I'll be going through the American Film Institute's top 100 movies. So every week I'll do a new review based on that movie list. You can get exclusive reviews based on your requests. Request a movie review and I will review it for you. You'll also get exclusive content for behind the scenes stuff as well. You also get exclusive interviews that I haven't posted yet as part of my podcast, like older interviews with Academy Award winners and other great filmmakers and actors as well, and a bunch of other cool stuff as well. I hope you can all join up, be part of this great experience I have an offer for you. Support indie content creators, support a movie critic like myself who is trying to make it through the content creator space. Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel memberships. Please join and get some great exclusive content. I think a big one of that is Jaws. A lot of the big stuff that in Jaws that people kind of remember, from lines like "gonna need a bigger boat" to like the USS Indianapolis thing, is attributed to other people. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure Roy Scheider kind of came up with the whole gonna need a bigger boat thing on set, where you had someone like John Milius come in and do kind of rewrites on that monologue and bring his own spin to it. And it
Yeah.
happens, like you said, it happens quite a lot. Who the people who are credited do get things changed. I think the only person, maybe the only people you can think for sure their words have gone to screen and no one's messed with it. Tarantino, Woody
Yeah.
Allen, kind of people like that, like the writer directors kind of thing, where it's like it's their thing, it's
Hmm.
their voice, no one's going to touch it. Kevin Smith, I imagine in the indie world as well, in that kind of context as
Yeah.
well. But
Yeah.
with a big thing like this, by the way, what a cracking lineup! Just looking at, if you look back on it, Coppola producer, Branagh director, um, De Niro, actor, Darabont, screenwriter. That's like something else. That's like a dream team kind of situation kind of
Yeah.
put together. And so no wonder like expectations were big for something like this
Yeah.
going
The whole
forward.
cast. The whole cast is
Yeah.
great. Like Ian Holm, John Cleese. There's a who's who of just big British actors at the time.
Um, Speaking of the cast, so let's talk about De Niro. I think a lot of people, when they think De Niro as Frankenstein, is a kind of concept they have in their brain or what that is. I remember the stand-up comedian Frank Caliendo, who does a lot of the
Hmm.
impressions. He did a funny impression of De Niro as Frankenstein, where he's like, "Ooh, I'm Frankenstein's monster. Look, I got bolts in my neck. Ooh, scary, scary," that kind of thing, right? I actually quite like how they did the Frankenstein's creature, known as the creature in this movie, because it was just different. And I
Hmm.
think some when you kind of like how Oldman was different as Dracula, with kind of like
Yeah.
the look and everything else, and like the big hair and all that kind of stuff. They definitely had to do that here as well. Supposedly, Andy Garcia and Gerard Depardieu were both kind of like considerations to take this. They gave Andy Garcia one's funny because I think Coppola was thinking Garcia for Dracula as well in Bram Stoker's Dracula,
Yeah.
which would have been an interesting kind of thing to see. But of course, everything worked out well with that with Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
Depardieu would have been kind of interesting as well, I think. I think he had like kind of like the facial features for it.
Hmm.
But De Niro gets the part. Um, so De Niro actually said that he wanted to look at it kind of like more of a reality-based kind of thing. De Niro being who he is, he kind of like does research and such. He looked at stroke victims, people who kind of suffered with cardiac ailments. That's how he kind of got the whole thing with his lip and kind of like the droopy kind of thing and all
Hmm.
that. And Branagh was saying that while the makeup is really important on it, he wanted to make sure that people understood that it was a man among in the creature. Like you need to see De Niro's eyes and get into his soul and do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think just the way that it did kind of come about and the way they do the whole reconstruction with the stitches and everything else and how he kind of looked and that really cool kind of duster kind of jacket thing he had, which is
Yeah. I
awesome.
love the
I
duster.
I love it. When I was speaking to Duster, I couldn't help but think of It's Always Sunny with a
Yeah.
little Duster thing in there as
Same.
well. Because there is a scene actually in the movie where, like, talking again of Branagh being high on his own supply, there's a scene in a lab where he's running around, he's shirtless, but he's wearing like this really
Yeah.
long, I don't know if it's velvet or something coat, and I was just thinking of the Duster, kind of thing, because it's like he's got the shirt underneath,
Yeah.
which is very, very
I
Branagh
mean,
of him.
Branagh's always shooting himself in the most flattering way possible,
Hmm.
and it is
Hmm.
so funny. It's like if he has a
It is.
shirtless scene, you can tell that guy was just doing a bunch of crunches and stuff. He has
Oh
like
yeah.
the glistening look, and
He's
it's
oily.
so
Hmm.
funny. Yep,
He's
it's
got the
so
oil.
it's
He's
so
got the
funny.
the angles, all that stuff ready to go. Looks
Yeah,
good. I tell you what, though, if you're young at that time and you can pull it off, and you're directing the movie, you do it. Because when you're 65 and you look back, you're like, "Hey, check it out,"
yeah. Oh yeah, I
Um,
got it. I'm 34 right now, and I was like, yeah, I'd do the same thing.
oh, dude, I'm 44. I got 10 on you, so I definitely do the same thing. Um, but yeah, I think it was really cool how they did it in this, and I know that De Niro has a certain impression upon people about what he is, but he's Robert De Niro. He's like one of the greatest actors of all time, and while it might not be a hit with some people, I actually quite liked what he brought to the creature in this movie. I kind of felt that humanity, but also the savageness as well. Was
Yeah.
quite good. What was your impressions of De Niro as Frankenstein's monster in this movie?
He's my favorite part about it. I like the design, I like his performance. It's understated. It's at least more understated than you would expect from someone like De Niro.
Hmm.
And it's not it's not nearly as prominent as you would probably expect it to be. This is definitely Branagh's movie, but I don't know. I really like it. I like how it's framed. I like because like De Niro's not a super tall man, and they make
Yeah,
him seem very pretty imposing in it, and
yeah, they
his
do.
and it's I don't know. We My impression of De Niro is always someone that doesn't isn't really willing to compromise much with when it comes to filmmaking, and that's because of I'm mostly seeing him like you know, meet the parents on where he's just like, no, I'm giving you what I'm giving you. But this actually feels like something where he actually met Branagh halfway and gave him like, because I can't see even 1998 De Niro sitting in the makeup chair for whatever 6, 7 hours to do like to actually do all of this. I feel like if anything, he's turning that kind of role down, which maybe it's because of Frankenstein that then
Mm.
he then was like, no, I'm not putting myself through that again. But yeah, I was impressed with how much he was willing to kind of lose himself in the role, which I know that's also a criticism is that some people are like, oh, there's too much De Niro in it. But I disagree and think that it feels different enough. He's easily my favorite part about it. What about you?
I love him in this movie. I think my favorite part of De Niro in this film are those parts at the beginning of the creature's journey where he's kind of like feeling his way through things. The
Yeah.
scene where he befriends the blind man in the farm and he gets the crops for that family. He's trying to do good, but
Hmm.
because of his appearance and everything, he gets kind of shunned away. And then he starts sobbing later. And like at that point, his faith in humanity has just been crushed. I found it to be incredibly effective at
Yeah.
the time. And in a movie where sometimes I think the lavishness and the operatic kind of feel of it is so big and overwhelming a lot of times, sometimes to its good, sometimes to its detriment, you kind of lose the humanity of what's going on here. And I think those quiet scenes where De Niro is just kind of like, the creature is like going through the motions of what it is to be feared and hated and discarded, not only by his father, but like from society as a whole. And only the blind man, the man who can't see, is the one that can kind of tell that this man's hurting, but has got a good heart. I like that, and I think it would have been cool to see more of that. And I think that's kind of something that did happen behind the scenes, where we were getting Coppola pushing for more
Hmm.
subtlety, and Branagh just going, fuck no, I ain't giving
Yeah.
that to you. No way in
Subtlety,
hell.
what's that word? Seemed to be
Exactly.
Branagh's response to anything subtle. It's like, huh? No, that's not what this is. We're going practically comic book and how over the top nearly every like how he's shooting and how he's presenting things. He has to like smack you over the head with it.
Big time. Another person we got to talk about, Helena Bonham Carter in this movie. She plays Elizabeth. So she's like the adoptive sister, but also becomes a fiance later as well in the movie. And there's another part of the film that happens as well. And spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it. There's like a Bride of Frankenstein kind of like thing happening there as well at the end of the movie, which I think for
Yeah.
a lot of people kind of took them back at the time, because everyone knows Bride to be the sequel of, as opposed to in the same story. And
Yeah.
I haven't read the novel, the Mary Shelley's book. I don't know whether that was something that was even in the book. I'm not 100% on it. Have you even read it? Like I haven't read it myself, so I'm
I
not
read it
sure.
back in high school and I don't think
Yeah,
that it's part of it, but I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's not part of the book.
which is it's an interesting kind of addition to it all.
Yeah.
So supposedly, Emma Thompson, which as we spoke before, was Kenneth Branagh's wife at the time. In every film that Branagh did, Emma Thompson was in. So like they've
Yeah.
done 4 films in a row. And so when Branagh got the thing, he kind of presented the idea to her, and she's doing Junior with DeVito and Schwarzenegger. She's doing, I forgot what the other movie was that she was doing as well. So can't do it this time, hun, but you go ahead and, cast someone else, which he does.
Yeah.
And we know the consequences of that, which
Yeah.
was Helena Bonham Carter. Now, this is the first time I've ever saw Helena Bonham Carter in a movie, because I think at that time she did a lot of kind of period films like Room with a View and things like that. So that wasn't really I wasn't watching that like at 13,
Yeah.
12 years old. It's not my bag, right? So this is the first time I kind of saw her in this. And later on, she became to be like Tim Burton's muse in a lot of ways in a lot of the
Yeah.
films there. I thought she was pretty cool in the movie. She brought a certain sensuality to the film as well.
Hmm.
And you can kind of tell as well that the chemistry between the two, Brenner and Bonham Carter, was really strong. And of course, later on, we find out that there was a adulterous affair going on there as well.
Yeah.
Um, and then she appears in like probably the most talked about scene with the whole thing with the heart being ripped out of the chest and all that.
Yeah.
What do you think of Bonham Carter in this movie?
I like her as the movie goes on, but in the begin, there's a lot of stuff with Brana in this that I'm not a fan of. I will say they have great chemistry, like
Mm,
they're very electric together, but there is, and this is true of the book too, where and I'm not surprised that Brana took to the source material so much because, like you said earlier, it's like Shakespeare with like how it's presented, and like that's how it is in the book. It's very Shakespearean, and
mm.
so I just don't really jive with that, and I just kind of zone out during that kind of dialogue. And it genuinely doesn't even really pick up for me until they're actually starting the process of creating the monster or the creature. And her stuff again prior to her actually getting like the remade and all that, I don't know. She's fine, but I think it's a kind of a role that anyone could do that it just doesn't stand out to me very much. But I think that's genuinely outside of like De Niro, that I could say that's the case for pretty much every aspect of the performances and the people because it's just not my kind of thing.
I want to talk about John Cleese as the Professor Wardman, who's kind of like the mentor to
Yeah.
Frankenstein in the film, kind of sets him on the path of this whole kind of project to reanimate, these dead people. So people don't know, in the movie, Branagh's character of Victor loses his mother to a very kind of like in very kind of dramatic kind of way, and that kind of sets him down his kind of obsession with death and whether we could bring back and the new sciences was happening at the time. Half the time this it's set in within well at the start of the film for like a good portion it's set within like his college or his university. He's clashing with professors because his ideas are so unorthodox and such. And so Professor Waldemar was kind of like he's kind of like the person who kind of ushered him along and kind of pushed these unorthodox ideas to lead to where they eventually lead to. Um,
Mhm.
Now, at that time, I wasn't watching a lot of Monty Python and stuff. I kind of came to it later. So I didn't know who John Cleese was. And even afterwards, I kind of realized that I still didn't get that that was John Cleese underneath the makeup and all that because he looks so kind of different. And Cleese actually took on the role because he's like, no one goes up to him asking him to do character roles. He's always like the tall, funny guy who can do kind of awkward stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so I think at the time he was 54 years old and it was the first time someone asked him to do a role where it's not about getting laughs, it's about playing the actual character. And so he took to it and he did it. And again, the makeup I thought with him was really great in it. How long did it take you to realize that was John Cleese who was playing this character? So, as I said to me, I had blinders on quite a bit when it came to seeing who this actor was.
I was pretty quick to it. I think it's just because I'm always that my brain always just is like, wait a minute, something. Oh, okay, it's that person. Like Lance and I just covered the show Midnight Mass, which is on Netflix,
Yeah.
and they have a bunch of like people in old person makeup, and he had no idea that a certain character was another person because they were in the old man makeup, but I clocked it pretty quickly because that's just I
Hmm.
don't know, that's how my brain works. So I noticed it pretty quickly, but then also his I think his voice is very distinct, so even if I didn't notice physically, I know that voice would have been a signal for me because I do know John Cleese's work pretty well, especially at that point as well. But at this point, I just know John Cleese very well. Fish Called
I
Wanda is
gotta
like one of my favorites.
Yeah, see, I didn't watch a lot of that stuff till later. I think maybe the first John Cleese thing I ever saw was maybe Rat Race that came out like in the
Hmm.
late 90s. I remember seeing that in cinemas, and then after that, the Pythons and all that, everything else. A
Yeah.
name I bring up though, who I think is like one of the winners of this movie is Daniel Parker. He's a makeup artist from the
Hmm.
UK. Worked with animated extras. He got the lone Oscar nomination for this role for the makeup in this film, which I thought was pretty cool, like the makeup job that he does here. Speaking of
Yeah.
John Cleese, I think something that kind of messed me up a bit was the teeth, the caps with the teeth. Look very
Yeah.
kind of different. So that was kind of like, oh, all right, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I know the British people had bad teeth, but I didn't know it was that bad. But yeah. um, okay, so we're going to talk about the filming, the production of this. So we've touched on a lot of stuff already in regards to Branagh's ego kind of like taking over this monstrous kind of production. So I said before there was clashes in between Coppola and Branagh, subtlety versus excess. And so I've got, as you could see, the film, kind of the tone is kind of can be a little off at times, or sometimes the really big bombastic scenes kind of sit uncomfortably kind of other ones. For
Yeah.
me, I really kind of like the big bombastic scenes because, again, going back to maybe a certain sense of nostalgia, it just to me, I've never seen anything like it. But looking back, you could see where certain things were just seemed to be too too off-putting in regards to kind of the excessiveness in the movie. And Branagh was like he wanted to create, he said, a fairy tale world with primary colors, large rooms. There's so many large rooms in this movie. Space, size, big buildings, big nature. He wanted enormous kind of natural force. That's what he wanted. He wanted something really big and enormous. And I think it's really interesting how you have a gothic horror, but primary colors is kind of like a very kind of big thing here. The big thing that I remember in regards to color is a lot of the dress in the film. The scene where the mother is trying to is giving birth, and just the
Yeah.
blood, the crimson blood in it is like very red, like very vibrant. The scene where I think it was Brenner was he had Elizabeth in his arms. He was going up like a big winding staircase, and her wedding gown was just dripping red, and that red was just flowing up, the kind of thing.
Yeah.
Again, very big, and it kind of looked like not a movie set, but a stage set in a certain way. The way that staircase kind of went up and the way that was made, that looked very stagey to me and not filmed to me. And it kind of put me off a little bit because I
Yeah.
was like, well, I could imagine seeing this like in an opera house or stuff like that, and it would work really well. But in the movie,
Yeah.
I think at times some of the set designs, production designs were really kind of clashing, as well as narrative tones in the movie. That's something that kind of really came across with me. The Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you will love.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a weird the set design. There's times where it just feels very setty, like the whatever laboratory itself.
Hmm,
It's very big, but it just again, it feels very, very much like it's in a warehouse. And I don't mind sometimes when things get very setty, but there's this one, it just kind of gets a little out of control, and I think it's because of it's like the I think it's the lab that has that triangle window that has like
right.
the pokes of light through it, and it looks so I feel like if it was presented in a slightly different way, it might not feel as over the top, but how Branagh presents it, it's hard to just not feel like, oh, okay, yep, we're in a set now. We're in this place, which I know they spent because they built like two different ships for it, which I love that, but there's also a moment where you're like, did we really need to build full practical ships for this, or could you have gotten away, especially with how much it doesn't really these don't stand out as needing practical ships in these moments. So there's just odd decision making from Branagh. And I think the thing that is the most odd of anything in the movie is when Helena Bonham Carter she's like narrating her diary, like, or maybe it's not, maybe it might be a letter to
It's a letter.
Victor
Yeah.
where it is so like it's genuinely only for the audience's benefit, and I think that kind of stuff just shows like the weird tone that Brana was going for with it, where it's like, whoa, if you're gonna do this, like just have her writing. I don't need her actually physically saying these things because Carter doesn't. She sounds weird saying it. She sounds performative saying it, and I think that that's kind of a running theme throughout this is that everyone feels so performative, and the sets don't help with that because then it's like I'm sure that this would work great in a stage play, but I want a movie. I don't need things to be so big and so again, subtlety would have helped out a bit. I agree with Coppola.
The what you just said there about the letter that Bonham Carter is writing, I still remember there's a certain awkward beat to the way that she narrates that she speaks to
Mhm.
herself, and I still remember a certain line that she says, which is kind of weird, where she's got her thing, she's reading it, and she goes, "Well, me, well, I miss you," kind of like that kind of thing. And I remembered how she said that exactly in that kind of way. And again, it was like at the same time, it was like it was off-putting, but I think the way that I kind of look at this film now, and like the way I think the best way you need to look at it to make it work, you got to look at it as a melodrama. It's going to be big
Yeah,
and it's going to be heart on sleeve, kind of like big emotions, big everything, big Branagh kind of like chest out kind of everything else, big stages. Speaking of that laboratory stage, how insane is that kind of set? Because you got pulleys, you got this huge tank with the electric eels and water,
yeah,
and Brenner's running around and he's sweating. Supposedly, freaking, they'll use tubs and tubs of KY just everywhere because for all the kind of like gross stuff and all that. There was a
yeah,
supposedly the scene where De Niro comes out, like the tank kind of bursts and De Niro kind of oozes
yeah,
out and it's just shit everywhere. Supposedly, as he's trying to pick up De Niro's character and he's slipping everywhere. De Niro supposedly saying in Brenner's ear, "Don't get KY up my ass, don't get KY up my ass." It's like saying that to him as they're trying to do that. And supposedly that moment in the film led De Niro to kind of buy in more into the melodrama because he couldn't help but laugh during that
yeah.
scene. And De Niro is very kind of like
Hmm.
piranha focus, kind of great white focus with his stuff. So he's cracking up. Like I think he's kind of seeing the silliness of the whole thing too. But
Yeah,
again, with that scene, there are certain moments in horror that are just iconic, and I think that the original Frankenstein is a whole it's alive thing, right? It's like that's like one of the big things ever. Like people say that all the time. It's alive, it's alive. And I imagine with doing a movie like Frankenstein, Brenner had to try to figure out a way to bring that to the movie because you can't do a Frankenstein without having that in it, but
yeah,
kind of make it his own. And I think the way that he does it in the film, where he's like looking down at the tank and the eels are doing all their thing and everything else, it's madcap, it's big, it's huge, it's not dramatic, but I kind of dig it. I don't know why.
yeah,
And it also has a kind of I don't know, kind of like a steampunk kind of aesthetic to it as well. It's like
yeah,
all kind of like chains and everything else. Again, tonally odd, kind of mixed up with everything else. But at the same time,
yeah,
it's so big in everything else. If I look at it like as a melodrama above anything else, I think I don't know. I kind of dig it because it was just different to me. And
yeah,
I think different can be a weakness, but I think sometimes it could be kind of like, it could be an advantage. And there's so many Frankenstein movies, that one definitely does stand out. And for, whether good or bad, it's a movie that definitely stands out with the way that it approaches
yeah.
its stuff.
I'm curious as to what you think of the scene where the creature knocks Victor off like a cliff. Victor
Oh,
goes
you mean,
flying, and then
and
he
then he
goes down like the
jumps
slide.
the slide, yeah.
It's like it's so like it's like conceptually it's so funny because literally then the creature has him like the next moment. He's like dragging
Yeah.
him out of the water. Which is like I guess Brana just wanted to go down a slide here because otherwise I don't really understand the point of it because guess what? The creature gets him anyway.
I
It's
find that kind
just
of funny because he's there and it's just him and he's got his little gun and he's going after this guy that he knows is like this almost immortal kind of giant kind of thing. I don't know exactly what he was going to achieve, but I think what's
yeah.
quite funny about it is that he turns, he sees a creature, and he does like a push, and it's like slow-mo kind of back. And the
Yeah.
slide down, I don't know why, but it always recalled to me the scene in Willow where Val Kilmer and Warwick Davis are going down the toboggan down
Hmm.
the slide, and it turns into a big kind of snowball. I don't know why. It kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah.
It looks
I can
great.
see
I
that.
think the photography like looks fantastic in the location shoots and everything else. But again, yeah, it does come back to I think Brenner was trying to do some stuff which maybe he wasn't equipped yet to kind of pull off. I think maybe like with Thor later on, he's got maybe used to doing certain action beats and stuff he can pull off at that movie. Maybe in this movie, just I don't know if he got it yet. And it's interesting. So I was talking about the guy who wrote the initial script, Steph Laddie. He
Hmm.
was at the premiere and he was watching the film with everyone else. And later on in this podcast he did, he lives in Australia now. He lives in Darwin in Australia. Did a podcast with some people there, and he talked about how the movie kind of like Brenner kind of became sort of the metaphor of the movie itself. Like Brenner was turning into like this obsessive kind of guy who was trying to make this thing out of different pieces and everything else, and it just made this big monster that was like kind of out of control. And he also said that Brenner banned executives from his set. He got crazy, just like Victor Frankenstein. He was married to Emma Thompson. Meanwhile, he's shacking up with Helena Bonham Carter on the set, and everyone knows it. So everyone knew what was going on there as well. So he's just getting like again high in his own supply. He's making his movie, which again he's the real like Victor Frankenstein here. He's the boy
Yeah.
wonder. He's trying to create this big thing, but he's doing pieces of everything else. He's trying to put it together. The monster's out of control, and he's fallen in love with his leading lady. Huge scandal when this happened, by the way. Like in the UK, huge scandal. And you know how much the UK love their tabloid fodder, right? I imagine
Yeah.
it probably was around the same time as the whole Princess Diana, Prince Charles thing as well.
Yeah.
They love a good big thing, and for him especially, who was kind of like this uh, stage Shakespeare guy, pip and proper, um, you know, like you said, like Brenda said before, people kind of saw him as a bit of a wanker because of just the way he was. But he was married to Emma Thompson, it's like this golden couple. I think they just
Yeah.
ate it up like nothing else over there, and it was just a yeah huge scandal in regards to this movie.
Yeah, it's lucky that Helena Bonham Carter's like career made it through because that very easily could have been the kind of thing that just destroys her career, which would have been
I
too bad
think
because I really like Helena Bonham Carter. So
she bounced back. I think pretty well. I think because what would come out after that? Fight Club would come out.
yeah, Fight
She was
Club would have been a big
and
one
then
that put her back on the
the
map.
Tim Burton movies as well would have been quite big
Yeah,
for her as well. And then after
yeah,
that, I think it kind of became, you know, she like became an institute within herself. She wasn't attached to anyone. She was kind of like her own kind of thing. After like when she afterwards when she broke up with Tim Burton and all that, like she was like Helen Bonham Carter. She was like her own kind of like she had her own identity.
yeah.
And has appeared in heaps of films since then, Harry Potter, everything else. Branagh, though, I was trying to think what was the last kind of things he did after this because I know he said that he did go back to the UK. He had a divorce from Emma Thompson. He did a really small film afterwards. I'm just going to look here what it was called because he does I think I forgot what the film's called, but it's like a really small film about um, funny enough, a guy from the UK who went to Hollywood. He comes back to the UK and does a small Shakespeare play. That's what the movie's about.
Oh,
So
okay.
essentially playing himself in the movie. Um,
Yeah.
I forgot what the movie's called though. But yeah, he did really small stuff. I don't remember the like kind of like the next big thing that he does after
I think
that though.
Hamlet
Harry,
Hamlet was just like 2 years later,
right, okay.
which
So
is
that
pretty
kind of
big,
brought
had
him.
quite the cast.
I remember he did was a movie called Gingerbread Man or something. It was like Robert Altman was the director, I think, the
Yeah,
movie, and it had
the gingerbread man.
I don't think
The
that did well.
proposition as well.
Oh, yeah. No, not the proposition. Rabbit Proof Fence was the one that he did.
No, oh, I'm not just in terms of him starring in.
Oh,
He's
okay.
in a
Fair enough.
yeah, he's in a movie. It's like 98, I believe.
Right.
Proposition. It's
Because
like
there's
I
a,
mean it's
yeah. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere.
no, it's nothing. It's like nothing amazing, but I think like Neil Patrick Harris is in it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I'm not sure I'd recommend it, but I know that that was another one that he was in.
There was a movie he did in Australia in early 2000s called Rabbit Proof Fence, which was directed by Philip Noyce. And it was a movie about the stolen generations, the Indigenous people, kids who were stolen from their families and such. And he plays like a really rigid kind of like English kind of colonel who like sets about this kind of plan to be implemented.
No.
And that was a big film here in Australia as well. And now ever since then, I think, go ahead.
Wild Wild West. He's the bad guy in Wild Wild
Oh,
West.
that's right. Yes. That
I
was
just
that
I
was
got the mental image.
That was 98, right? When that came out.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Kevin Kline and
God.
Will Smith. Big giant
Yeah,
spider.
Dr. Loveless. That was an insane movie. Oh my God. Yeah, terrible
Think,
film, but like he's great
yeah,
in it.
I think I saw it in cinemas. He's the one who's got like he's walking around with like
It's like the
uh
spider legs.
spider legs. Yeah, it's like what yeah,
Yeah.
that's a crazy
Or your
movie.
steampunk. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like he
Again, yeah,
definitely wasn't in a lot of stuff that I was watching at the time. Like he
no.
just wasn't because he's kind of stuck around with like period pieces and like Shakespearean type roles and this wasn't ever really my thing.
And then, funny enough, he kind of becomes kind of like a guy who's part of all these different IP franchises. Harry Potter was the first one he kind of went along with. And
Yeah.
then he goes into the initial stages of the MCU with Thor, and then he does Artemis Fowl, and then he does the Agatha Christie kind of stuff as well.
Yeah.
And then he finally gets an Oscar for Belfast, which again kind of is more of a stripped back kind of movie, black and white, and everything else. So it's really
Yeah.
kind of interesting kind of see how post it was kind of like this really the ascent was there with those first movies, and then after
Mhm.
Frankenstein kind of went down, kind of settled, and then he found his kind of his groove back there again as
Yeah.
well. I think a lot of people of maybe the Potter generation probably didn't even know he was married to Emma Thompson and such, right? He's probably so long has passed, and they just know him as the guy who, shows up in these movies and directed Thor and what was the other one? He
Yeah.
did the Jack Ryan film as well, right?
Yeah, he definitely
The one
yeah,
with Chris
Shadow
Pine.
Recruit. Yeah,
I think
Jack
that's what it's
Ryan
called.
Shadow Recruit. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
like the bad guy in it too, I think, and
Plays a Russian. That's right. Yeah.
yeah, which feels off. I've only watched the movie the one time and it was like back when it came out, but I remember thinking like this I like Branagh, but this isn't something about this is not working.
It was an interesting film because it was supposed to set the stage for this new cinematic reboot, and it lasted the one movie. And you had the
Yeah,
stars, you had Chris Pine and Keira Knightley and everyone else,
yeah,
and maybe what a few years after that they went the streaming route with Kaczynski in the Jack Ryan show. So
yeah,
yeah, he has a very interesting career here. So the movie comes out November 4, 1994. So it has a budget of 45 million, which is kind of crazy to think,
yeah. It's a
when movies
lot.
this big, yeah, 45. 112 million dollars worldwide. Sounds sounds good, but supposedly like way less successful than Stoker's Dracula in the film, that film. And so I think Coppola really just wanted more from it and didn't get it. I know Wolf came out afterwards. I'm not sure if that was a Francis Ford Coppola movie as well, the one with Jack Nicholson, with Mike
Yeah,
Nichols. I got to double
yeah. I
check
don't
that
know if
one.
Coppola had any involvement with that.
Because it was interesting how these movies kind of one after the other. There was the Wolfman movie, and then that movie. I'm just gonna look it up here. So
Yeah.
at the London premiere,
Why didn't we get a creature from the Black Lagoon? Come on. Got all these things that
yeah.
are coming back.
Well, I don't know why not. Supposedly, I think they're making one, aren't they? Creature from Black
Well, I
Lagoon.
mean, technically, like Shape of Water came back, and we got that.
Right.
That was our creature. That was our classy creature. I just meant in terms of where's our mid to early '90s like Creature from the Black Lagoon style movie. They missed their opportunity.
They did. I imagine after Frankenstein Day, they were like, no more of these. Because
Yeah,
at that time, horror changes, right? 96 comes around, Scream's there, the teen kind of horror movie comes back in a big
yeah.
way.
Scream changed everything in terms of horror.
Everything.
Suddenly, it was like you have to be meta. If you're not meta, you're not gonna do anything.
And then after that, it's action horror with Blade and Underworld. So that was kind of like the stuff that took it, and then here we are again. They were trying to do the Dark Universe again with the Mummy with Tom Cruise, didn't work. But now we got a new Frankenstein. I do wonder if they're going to do another new Dracula. I know that Luc Besson one's coming out soon, but supposedly it just doesn't seem to be making much traction there. Um,
Yeah,
at the London premiere, Prince Charles actually shows up and thanks, Kenneth Branagh for shooting the film in London. Again, kind of funny with the two, probably the UK's most two well-known adulterers are together at this movie there. So it's kind of funny thing there. Again, going back to what was his name? Steph Lady, who was the screenwriter, he talked about being at the premiere and everyone was kind of sitting down and who was there? He said Tom Cruise was there, Nicole Kidman, Danny DeVito was sitting next to him, and he said that Prince Charles sat behind Danny DeVito, and Danny DeVito turned around and he says, "I don't care who you are, just don't kick my chair," which would have been a fun sight to see because Danny DeVito, like
Relatable.
he doesn't give a he won't give a shit. Yeah, but yeah, it's like don't do it. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so it's been like I think last year was what its 30th anniversary or 20th. It was 90th, 20th, yeah, 30th anniversary last year. And to me, it's a film that I think has. See, I'm kind of I got blinders on in regards to the movie because I do have sentimental value for the film, and there's many
Yeah.
things I do like about it. When it comes into the context of Frankenstein movies, though, so now we've got the Toro, and then you got the classic, films of the Universal monsters. Where do you think Mary Shelley sits? Is that bottom of the rug, or do you think it's kind of like nice in the middle, kind of like a film there? Because it is a big production. It's probably one of the biggest kind of Frankenstein productions there has been, and I know, and lately it does have a bit of a cult following to it as well. Because I imagine a lot of uh, people around my age who kind of grew up watching it on VHS and everything might have the same kind of nostalgia with it. Where's your kind of where do you put it kind of like in the pecking order of things of Frankenstein more in on cinema?
I mean, for me, I definitely rank it lower, just but I understand it is a divisive movie. I know some other people that really quite enjoy it. And I think it ultimately comes down to I'm not a big fan of the book. My
Mm,
my Frankenstein is the Boris Karloff style. And even to an extent like the Christopher Lee Hammer one, something where it's just more of a I don't know. I want the creature. I don't need the like the Victor Frankenstein isn't the cell to me. And it's just like the I'm not sure if you saw it, but the new Guillermo del Toro
I
Frankenstein
haven't yet.
film.
No,
It's very, very good, and you'll see there's so many similarities between that and this film. But I like my favorite part of the movie was once the creature gets introduced and it's more of like the creature story. That's always where I've always fallen. I'm more of a monster movie fan,
mm.
and I the other stuff just it's not as appealing to me, but I understand other people enjoying it. It's just never been my thing, and now especially with Del Toro's version, I can't imagine I revisit Mary Shelley's Frankenstein often just because they are so similar, but I'm a Del Toro guy, so I'll definitely be doing that. I'll be choosing that more so over Kenneth Branagh's ego trip.
For me as well, I think the original Frankenstein, the Todd Browning one, is just fantastic. It's one of my favorite horror movies. It really is. And I know that that kind of the Boris Karloff ones, the Universal ones, the ones got watered down a lot over the years with sequels and
Yeah.
kind of like all these kind of they kind of partner up with other Universal and there's what are names oh help me out here the
Abbott and Costello.
Albert Costello meet Frankenstein, like a lot of that kind of stuff as
Yeah.
well. Which I think, it's funny in its own way, but if you're going to look at a comedy, you look at what Peter Boyle does with Young Frankenstein, right?
Yes.
And that kind of stuff. Or maybe even what was it what was the name what's the name of the actor who did Frankenstein and Monster Squad? He's the bloke who's in from
Oh,
Manhunter. Oh, I forgot his
yeah.
name.
I can't remember his name. I'm always
I
so
forgot
bad
his
with
name
that kind
too,
of thing.
which I'm
Yeah.
not, which is going to hit me later. I'll text you when it comes up. Let you know. I think it's not Tom Hunting, but it's something close to that.
Tom
But
Noonan.
so
Tom
there we go,
Noonan.
Tom Noonan. Yeah, who
Yeah.
in himself is just a frightening figure. He's very tall and imposing and such. So
Yeah. I
he
mean, the Last Action Hero is one of my first experiences with him, and he's
yeah,
terrifying in that film.
terrifying. And there's a movie he did. It's a small Jack Nicholson film that Sean Penn directed called The Pledge. He plays like a
Yeah.
villainous character in that as well. He's just terrifying in that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I think above anything else, it's an interesting film to just see how Kenneth Branagh, kind of like the Englishman who could do no wrong, the Wonderkind, comes to America, and then all hell kind of breaks loose because of it. And whatever movie comes out from whatever film came out from it, it's definitely a movie that left an impression more kind of like as a experiment maybe done bad by some, experiment done good by others. But it's a movie that affected people's lives in a very kind of like, negative way when it comes to, the personal lives of the people involved.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a fascinating film nevertheless. And I still think it looks great too. Like even though a lot of the decisions regarding, clashing of tone, I think the photography, the score is fantastic too, I thought, and some of the costumes and such was is pretty well done.
Yeah.
I think overall though, I think it's going to be hard to have people, like you said, kind of watch that movie when you have the Del Toro one, because I think the Del Toro one kind of usurped it as kind of like the gothic horror, kind of like with big production value kind of movie.
Yeah.
And I am interested in watching. I just haven't really had a chance to do so yet. I kind of get a little standoffish whenever films come out and they get really big acclaim, and I kind of like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna wait a bit for that to die down because I don't want to
Yeah.
watch something with that kind of stuff going on. But
Yeah.
regardless, thank you so much, Tyler, for joining me today to talk all things Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And for everyone out there listening, in the show notes, you could check out all of Tyler's work. I'm going to have all his stuff for Joe Blow. It is for his own website as well. Make sure you check it out. Yeah, and I just got to say again, it's been a pleasure to talk to you all things Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And also, I know it's Thanksgiving over there in America, so I'm thankful to you for your time today. And best of luck for you with the upcoming days. I hope you're getting a lot of cardio in now as much as you can, so you can survive the festive treats that are coming your way.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for having me. This is always a blast, Matt. So again, appreciate it. And I'm thankful that you invited me onto your show. So
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.